Terrell Prior, Troy Smith, Braxton Miller, and JT Barrett are some of the better quarterbacks you think of when it comes to Ohio State football this century, but despite the talent at the quarterback position being known to be great, the program has kind of been known to produce a lot of NFL quarterback bust, or guys who could just not translate their success to the next level. Most of these guys, like Prior for instance, were big-time recruits walking into Columbus, but did not pan out once they moved to the NFL. Today is the third video in my series where I take a look at every major quarterback a school has recruited this century, and we determine if they're good at quarterback development or an NFL quarterback bust factory. We're obviously sticking with the Ohio State Buckeyes today, and this video has been requested for months, and we will see how their quarterbacks pan out. So grab your popcorn and get ready to enjoy. But first, before we get into that, if you love college football, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, give the video a like if you want to support what I'm doing here on YouTube, suggest what school or position group I should do next, and turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about Ohio State quarterbacks. Steve Bellisari is a name that's not well known except for those within the Buckeyes fan base, as he was a high school star at Boca Raton High School in Florida, and his stellar prep career did not translate to the Buckeyes. In his first year at Ohio State, he wasn't even a quarterback, as he played special teams and defensive back before he would go under center. The 1990, 2000, and 2001 seasons were disappointing, as he only led the team to a 6-6, 8-4, and 7-5 records. His best season was 2000 when he passed over 2,000 yards with 13 touchdowns and 13 picks, which just wasn't the best for a program like Ohio State. He also faced controversy as he faced a one-game suspension towards the end of his senior year, and he got arrested for drunk driving, and he finished his career as a backup quarterback and gave up a late-game interception against South Carolina in the Outback Bowl, setting up the Gamecocks for a win by a field goal in that game. Still though, he was drafted by the St. Louis Rams in the 2002 draft and converted to safety. He was then out of football by the year 2005 and made his way into an indoor league called the NIFL, and he played for the Manchester Wolves. And his last pass of his career would be an interception. Greg Krenzel is a name more fans will know, and he was born in Michigan, where he was a high school star. He attended Henry Ford High School and was an excellent student and a letterman in both football, basketball, and baseball. He threw over 1,700 yards and 25 touchdowns, and he was a USA Today Honorable Mention All-American. One of his first starts came against Michigan after the previous guy was suspended for his drunk driving, and the team knew they had something special when he led their team to the first win in Ann Arbor since 1987. He was never a standout and was deemed more of a game manager, as his best season would come in 2002, as he passed for over 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 7 picks. In 2002, though, he led the Buckeyes to the national championship, where they won a double overtime game against the Miami Hurricanes. In 2003, he played average, but his team would go 11-2, with their losses coming against Wisconsin and Michigan, and a tough way to finish his career came against Kansas State in the Fiesta Bowl. Those were the only losses in his career, as he finished with a 24-2 record as a starter. He was a 5th-round pick in the 2004 draft by the Bears, where he won his first 3 starts, but lost his last 2, and then would injure his ankle. By 2005, he was cut, and eventually signed with the Cincinnati Bengals, where he was released in 2006 due to an elbow injury. As of now, he's currently a radio commentator for a radio station in Columbus that broadcasts Buckeye games, and he is definitely kind of a legend. Up next, we have Justin Zwick, and many probably don't remember his name. His high school career was very stellar, as he passed for 110 touchdowns, which was 3rd all-time in Ohio high school football history, and over 10,000 yards as well, which was 3rd behind the Mocs, I believe. Following his senior year, he was a consensus All-Ohio selection and was an Elite 11 quarterback and definitely a highly recruited player. He entered Ohio State as one of the highest rated quarterback prospects to ever come there, but his tenure was full of controversy and indecisiveness, as he only started his first 6 games of his sophomore year, and then he got injured, which would open the door for Troy Smith, and only returned when Smith was suspended from the team. His junior year, him and Smith would sub in and out, but ultimately he lost the job to Troy and would only appear in blowout games. He was considered a major disappointment, but Troy Smith is the one to blame for that. He had short stints on the Colts and Panthers, but could not make it to their game day roster. He eventually played arena football, where he was the backup to current Chicago Bears head coach Matt Nagy. High school was his peak, and from there he could not replicate the success, and he had an all-time great come after him. Troy Smith is a name college football fans everywhere will know, and he is one of the best Buckeye quarterbacks in our program history. Coming out of Ohio, he was one of the biggest recruits in school history. He was an Elite 11 guy and got a late offer from Ohio State, and he became the last player to sign for them that season. He was also a great player in basketball and track, and he began his college career as an athlete, as he was a returner in his first season. After Zwick got injured though, he would get his first chance to go under center, and he would win the starting job outright. He had controversy follow him though, as he received $500 from a booster, and this would affect him in the 2005 season. They lost 2 games in 2005 to the eventual national champs Texas and Penn State, but they would win the Fiesta Bowl against Notre Dame. In 2006, he took things to the next level as he completed 67% of his passes for 2,507 yards and 30 touchdowns. He won the Davey O'Brien Award, was a first-team All-Big Ten selection, and a first-team All-American. Plus, you cannot forget, He won the Heisman Trophy as well, and he was the first Buckeye player since Eddie George in 1995 to do that. He was a 5th-round pick by the Baltimore Ravens and would start a few games, but his starting chances dwindled and Joe Flacco became their starter. He was eventually released and signed by the 49ers, where he became the first black quarterback to start a franchise opener, which came against the Denver Broncos. He played so well he was named the NFL Offensive Player of the Week, but he was eventually replaced by number 1 overall pick Alex Smith. He later spent time with the Omaha Nighthawks of the United Football League and the Montreal Alouettes of the Canadian Football League, where he was released in 2014. He had a great college career and was a solid pro for a little while, but unfortunately he never lived up to the NFL hype he had. Terrell Prior is still carving out his NFL career and is a name that many know. He was one of the most highly touted recruits of all time. He attended Jeannette High School in Pennsylvania and was a dominant player on the football field and basketball court. He drew comparisons to Vince Young and led his school to state championships in football and basketball during his prep career. He became the first player in Pennsylvania high school football history to run for 4,000 yards and pass for 4,000 yards in a career. He had basically every award known to man, and he was also a star basketball player. He was considered a once-in-a-generation talent, and after extending his commitment date, he had the most anticipated signing day announcement in history as he chose the Buckeyes over Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, and West Virginia. In his freshman year, he led the team to an 8-1 record, only losing to Penn State, and he was named an honorable mention All Big Ten Conference selection. His sophomore year, he developed his passing abilities and led the team to another Big Ten title and a Rose Bowl MVP after defeating Oregon. Things started to go downhill in 2010 as he made the honorable mention once more, but it was becoming the end of his college career. In December of 2010, the NCAA ruled Prior out of his first 5 games of 2011 for selling memorabilia. This eventually led to him and Jim Tressel resigning, and the pressure of the NCAA investigation caused Prior to withdraw from the school. He was unable to put his name in the NFL draft, so he waited and entered the supplemental draft, where the Raiders selected him in the 3rd round. He found his way as the Raiders starter throughout his time there, but never lived up to the lofty expectations that were set for him. From there, he went to the Seahawks in 2014, but then he switched to wide receiver and found success with the Cleveland Browns, and had a 1,000-yard season. He had stints with the Redskins, Jets, Bills, and Jaguars, but he never lived up to the hype or close to his potential. Some would consider him a bust, and some would say he lived up to it, but I think it's in the middle. Joe Bauserman was put into a tough spot, taking over under center amid a lot of changes to the Ohio State program. He attended Lincoln High School in Tallahassee, Florida, where he was an all-state player in football and baseball, as he threw for 3,000 yards and 28 touchdowns. Baseball was his first choice after high school, though, as he'd play 3 seasons in the professional ranks before committing to the Buckeyes. In 2007, he was a walk-on and would back up Terrell Prior for 3 years. In 2011, he was named the starter and found himself struggling, eventually leading him to being benched for Braxton Miller, and he was a 3rd-string guy behind Kenny Guyton. That is where his short career would end, as he never took another snap for the rest of the season or his career. Braxton Miller was an electric player who was very well known for his many highlight reel plays and heroics in his time under center in Columbus. Coming out of Ohio, he was a football, baseball, and track star, and was named the Mr. Football Award finalist and competed in the Under Armour All-American game. He was a 5-star recruit according to Scout, and he chose the Buckeyes under head coach Jim Tressel and stayed true to his commitment despite the coach leaving. After taking over for a struggling Joe Bauserman, Miller finished the season as the 7th Ohio State player to win the Big Ten Conference Player of the Year award, while also winning the National Freshman of the Year trophy. He entered the season with new head coach Urban Meyer. He then took the next step, finishing with 2,000 passing yards and 15 touchdown passes, while also rushing for 1,200 yards and 13 scores, and led them to a 12-0 record. The Buckeyes were good enough to win a national title, but they had a bowl ban that season, and this forced him to sit out of postseason play. His junior year saw him improve even more, as he took home another Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year award. He finished with over 2,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 1,000 rushing yards, and 12 rushing touchdowns on the ground as well. Then injuries would spell the end of his quarterback career, as he tore his labrum to open the door for eventual starters JT Barrett, who then he would get hurt, and then Cardell Jones would come in. From there, he switched his positions and entered the 2016 draft and became a 3rd-round pick by the Texans, and had his moments, but could never really carve out a solid role, and by 2018, he was waived. He had stints with the Eagles, Browns, and Panthers, but could never stay on the roster. He had a great college career, but the combination of injuries and a position change did not allow him to translate properly to the NFL. JT Barrett came from S.H. Ryder High School in Wichita Falls, Texas, where he was a 3-sport athlete in football, basketball, and track. He was dominant on the field up until his senior year when he suffered a torn ACL, which would end it all for him. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 4-star recruit and the 7th best dual-threat quarterback in the nation, and that's when he decided to commit to Ohio State. He eventually stepped into the starting role after Braxton Miller was forced to miss the entire year, and played well until he broke his ankle against Michigan in 2015. This left the door open for Cardell Jones, who would go on to win the national title for them with Ezekiel Elliott by his side. He then go on to have a stellar college career after redshirting due to injury, as he threw for 2,555 yards, 24 touchdowns, and was a star as a junior, and then 3,000 yards and 35 touchdowns as a senior. He's the only quarterback on either side of the Michigan-Ohio State rival to go 4-0 as a starter, and was the first team All-Big Ten selection in 2014, 2016, and 2017. He was a 3-time captain and holds Big Ten records for most career touchdown passes, total touchdowns, most offensive yards, and he was one of the best Ohio State and Big Ten players of all time. His professional career did not have the same success, though, as he went undrafted. He spent time with the Saints, Seahawks, and Steelers before he was selected by the Alphas of the Spring League. So despite immense college success, Barrett could not translate to the next level, a theme for Buckeye quarterbacks, and I did a video on him, so be sure to check that one out. Up next, we have Cardell Jones, who will always be a Buckeye legend for his unique performance and his anti-school tweets. Just like Troy Smith, he came from Glenville, Cleveland, where he attended Ginn Academy. He was a star on the field and also lettered in basketball and track, and was a 3-star recruit before committing to Ohio State. Most remember him for his tweet, "Why should we have to go to class if we came here to play football? We ain't come to play school, classes are pointless," and that received a lot of heavy criticism. After an ankle injury to JT Barrett, this opened the door for him, and he had an unreal performance against Alabama and Oregon, and they won the national championship. Entering the next season, Jones and Barrett would be co-starters, with Jones starting the first 7 games before being benched by Barrett, and he announced his intention to go to the 2016 draft. He had short stints with the Bills, Chargers, and Seahawks before signing with the now defunct DC Defenders of the XFL, where he had found success, but then the league folded. Jones' journey was unique, and he'll be one of the most memorable guys of the decade. I actually do think he exceeded expectations. Dwayne Haskins had one of the best college football seasons of all time, and certainly is in the discussion as one of the best Buckeye quarterbacks ever. Hailing from New Jersey, he moved to Maryland during his high school career, where he was a standout on the field, and was actually originally a Terps commit, but he would later flip and decide on Ohio State. In his lone starting season, it was record-setting. He passed for over 4,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, making him just one of 6 players in NCAA history to ever do that. He was a first-team All-Big Ten selection, a semifinalist for the Maxwell Award, and he finished 3rd in the Heisman Trophy voting. After that, he decided to enter the 2019 NFL Draft. He went 15th overall to the Washington football team, and struggled when he got his chances on the field. Off the field, he made some mistakes, and seemed to have a lack of self-awareness and a lack of investment in his career, and he was eventually released so he could get a fresh start. He is currently on the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he hopes to secure a backup role, and maybe take over for Big Ben one day. Justin Fields may be the most talented Ohio State quarterback of them all, and may have the most pro potential. Hailing from Georgia, Fields was an absolute stud, a 5-star recruit, and one of the best recruits of all time. He first attended the University of Georgia, where he was the backup to Jake Fromm and Jacob Eason, and he'd see a little bit of time, but he would decide to transfer and head to Ohio State. After an incident with the baseball team, Fields was granted an immediate release and became the quarterback for Ryan Day at Ohio State. He had a great year in 2019, finishing with over 3,000 yards and 41 touchdowns, and also had 10 more rushing touchdowns on the ground, and he was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year and a first-team All-Big Ten selection. In 2020, Fields was on the forefront for pushing in the We Want to Play movement, and he helped all that happen. The season eventually did commence, and he led his team to an undefeated regular season, as he threw for over 2,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and had 5 touchdowns on the ground, and he was once again All-Big Ten and Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. He has since entered the NFL Draft, where he is projected to be a top pick, but a lot of people are finding reasons to hate on the guy. We'll see how he does, but for now, with Ohio State's track record, many think he will be a bust. The next group of 3 highly touted recruits are the guys who will be battling out this fall for the job. The first is CJ Stroud, who hails from California, who was a borderline 5-star recruit, and right now it looks like he's going to be the guy. The second guy is Jack Miller, who was a big-time recruit, and at one point nearly a 5-star recruit, but after an injury, he kind of fell towards the end, but was still a 4-star guy. And right now, after the spring game, he didn't look spectacular, so he's the kind of guy I think will eventually transfer. And finally, we have Kyle McCord, who was a prep star in the Pennsylvania high school football system, and chose to take his talents to Ohio State. Right now, it looks like he will be the backup, and maybe he could push Stroud for the starting job. We also can't fail to mention Quinn Ewers, who is seen as a prodigy and got a perfect rating on 24/7 Sports, and is definitely the future of that program. We'll see how these guys do, as Ryan Day is seemingly getting a lot of good quarterback commits, but with the track record, Ohio State is a bust factory. If you're trying to see college success, Ohio State is definitely a good place to go, but in terms of NFL success, it seems like they've had a lot of bust. Terrell Prior, Troy Smith, Braxton Miller, Cardell Jones, JT Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, and Justin Fields will have a lot of hype, but so far, none of those guys really made it in the NFL, and we'll have to wait and see how these new guys do. Let me know what school or position group I should do next, or any other topic I could do in my next video. Before you go, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you love college football content, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my similar video about Michigan being a quarterback bust factory as well. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.